Jen Ross is the music supervisor of Zoey's Extraordinary Playlist. I'm Kevin Jacobson of Gold Derby here with Jen. And first off, the music on Zoey's operates in a pretty unique way. And I'm wondering if you could break down just the specific challenges of Zoey's that you haven't necessarily faced on other shows you've done.
Oof. Listen, Zoe's is a very specific beast into itself. It's a blessing, but it's a very tough blessing, right? We use song, we use lyrics like dialogue, right? The minute you start to do that, the game changes in terms of music supervision, right? I come in the process super, super early. I'm working with Austin when he's working with the writers in terms of what his creative direction is. We start there, what's feasible, what isn't. And then we go upon a journey that it feels like, you want to get everything creatively done before the bomb detonates in terms of getting in front of camera in time. And there's just not much time, especially when you're episodic. We do 8-day shoots and we're turning around into another episode. We have episodes that have on the low side 5 songs, on the high side anywhere between 8 to 9 songs. And it's really a constant interesting game of how do you get everything done in the time and not compromise any of the creative storyline and any of the narrative. And we've been very blessed 2 seasons in to have ring the bell every time and gotten it done just in time. But it's the challenge on that is different than most other shows I've ever worked on. This is a completely different marathon into itself, and it's something that I really enjoy getting to do, but it is a incredible workout. It's a bit of a tightrope that we walk episodically, but luckily we get it done every time.
Yeah, I imagine it's a fun challenge.
Yeah.
I'm curious what the sort of balance is between you suggesting songs or Austin suggesting songs, and kind of what the average conversation would sound like between the two of you, like more specifically.
Listen, Austin has an incredible creative direction. He's very specific and very tuned into what he wants early on. So it's one of two things happen. But most of the time, he's very specific, and it's just this is the episode, this is the story, these are the songs I'm thinking. And from there, we start to have these songs, they are feasible, and let's talk strategy on how we're going to make this work. And then sometimes there's some things that either they're challenging for creative purposes, and we'll talk about that. Sometimes he'll have ideas and say, well, I like this song, but I'm not entirely sure. And then we'll open into an exploration process where we'll bounce ideas back and forth. He'll go back to the writer's room, and then we kind of take it from there. In other cases, sometimes it may be a clearance issue. Sometimes he may want something that unfortunately is going to be a little tough. And in those cases, we may explore, or we may try to get that while we look at other options. So it kind of changes. But, listen, he is a man with incredible vision. 9/10 of the time, he really does know what he wants. And luckily, most of the time, we're able to achieve it.
Yeah. Well, I was reading an interview with Austin, and he was talking about how there can be a divide sometimes between some of the younger writers on the show and like some of the higher ups at the network and maybe the older generation as far as what songs to include in an episode. Can you recall any specific examples of that kind of a generational divide from season 2?
I mean, there definitely is. And we had that happen a little bit more this season. But I also think, what's interesting is this season, we've used a lot of great big hits, like iconic songs. But we've also used some songs that I think are getting more exposure on this show than what the audience may be learning some of these songs. Like, for instance, Black Man in a White World. I think there are probably a lot of audience members that really absorbed that song for the first time that may not have been familiar with it. If you go into 11 and you hear Overwhelmed, I think that's another song that a lot of the audience, against something like, Not For Nothing, you look at our finale and you've got Sing, Shake It Off, I'm Still Standing, When a Man Loves a Woman. I mean, these are iconic songs, but it's to get those I don't want to say smaller songs, but things that are just a little bit deeper in the crate, if you will. That was a little bit more of a challenge this year of getting some of those across the line. But we did, and God willing, there's a season 3. I hope that we get to continue to do that, because I think much like life and what these heart songs are, is we discover new things and we lean towards those new things as we're going through different emotional journeys, right? So to be able to bring in some songs that may not be as common and as familiar, it's kind of fun. And it was interesting to really see that work its way more this season than it did in season 1.
Yeah. I like the pop hits, but then I do really like when it diverts into some of the more one-off moments. Like another example I'm thinking of is just in the premiere, the Big Hello Dolly number, which was, I think, an inspired way to sort of have Zoey welcomed back to the office. I was curious just on that one, how you came to the decision to do, a big extravagant show tune like that.
It's something that early on, before we even got into script phase and outline phase, Austin warned me in the hey, we're going to do something really big. It's probably going to be a show tune type musical theater number. We started to talk about that. They're challenging. There's a lot of aspects when you get into touching anything that comes from musical theater, especially because of grand rights, right? And there was this line of okay, well, explain to me and let me marinate on exactly how are we going to do this, because we got to figure out how we stand far away enough from what is the iconic original in order to be able to do it our way. Otherwise, we may have clearance issues. And there, to be fair, from the get, Austin was very clear that this, wouldn't this be for fantastic? Wouldn't this specific song? And it was something that, not for nothing, it took many, many weeks. Luckily, it was in the top of the season. Had we had done this at any other point, we probably, the clock would have run out. We were able to do this because we were able to talk about it. The minute it got picked up, he started saying, I think we want to do something big. It's going to be a show tune. Came to me with this idea so I could start having that dialogue. And it took quite some time to kind of explain what exactly we were going to do, how it was going to sound like, what the arrangement would be, what the setting would be, in order for us to be able to get to do it. It was quite a leap. And in that, also, not for nothing, we were just starting production in COVID. And to be able to pull something like that off when you have all these new procedures and we're all just kind of going I hope we can do it. And we got to do it, and it was great.
Yeah. Well, in episode 2 with Zoey and Max in bed, and he's cycling back and forth between "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" and "I'll Make Love to You." It's very fun. And then ultimately it lands on a moment like this, which is a duet between them. And it's this big climactic moment. And, that song is very sincere, and some would say cheesy, but I really like it. But it really works in the context of the scene. I was wondering if you had any nerves about whether that song in particular would land as this kind of emotional moment for the audience.
It's for them, it does, in the sense of there's something so honestly endearing about both of these characters, right? And there's something that, at the end of the day, their love and respect for each other, it comes from a place that started in friendship, right? And there's something that is so earnestly sweet and endearing about that song that you never really know until you start getting into the demo phase and then the cast records where you can really hear it, and you just kind of hope it's going to happen. And that was absolutely one of those moments that I think it came to life even more when you hear them than the thought on the page. You hear it and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, that's it's perfect. It's just something that it's not many people can pull that off, by the way. Kudos to them. Not many people can do that in a way that your heart melts in all the right ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, episode 9 also I wanted to talk about. It's really fun. I talked with Harvey Mason Jr., your music producer, too, about that episode. It's where all the heart songs get all mixed up and the characters are singing these different songs than what they'd usually sing. Can you talk about just figuring out the songs for that episode?
that, listen, it was tricky. It's one of my favorite episodes this season because we did turn everything on its axis, if you will. And it's a bit of a process trying to figure out, it's a puzzle, who really fits right with what song, right? And in that, I will say, anyone, the song Anyone and the arc of that, to be able to find a song that was going to play the top, that it really tips off the episode. Like, this does not feel like Max, something is wrong here. And before you even really understand what's about to happen, but it's got to be enough that you realize, like, wait, this doesn't fit. And yet still then be able to really play what's a very important storyline with Emily, right? That at the end of it, we find out not only is she the one in pain, it starts to open up she's dealing with postpartum depression, right? So that, it was tricky to find things that can kind of play both light and dark within the episode and still balance each other. It was definitely, it was a fun journey, but it was a bit of a journey. It was a lot of songs. I think we locked down on 8 at one point. We had 9 in the episode. Yeah.
Wow. So much. But the season finale also, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen it, obviously, but the final song of the season has Zoey singing to Max. She sings I Melt With You by Modern English. What made that song right to conclude the season with?
First of all, I'm gonna give away a little bit of my history in the sense of I came up on John Hughes films and things like Valley Girl and things that the songs that played love stories so touched me in a way. So there's that alone that I automatically hear it and go like, oh my God, that's the most amazing song. But really, I think, it's to take it back from that moment, from the actual Zoey Max moment, right? There's something liberating that happens in the Mitch Zoey moment when Mitch sings I Lived to her, right? It's a gift, if you will, right? That he opens her up to being willing to take this chance. And she realizes, like, if she doesn't do this, she's going to lose somebody in something so important. And then she thinks she does lose him, right? She thinks it's done. He's gone off with Rose. And there's something so magical. Again, like, you have these two characters, Zoey and Max, it comes from friendship, and it's real. And it's something that is so lovely and simple, because it really is, it's love, and love is risky, but it also, it melts your heart. And there's something about it that's just so honest and enduring. And that song just hits it in a way that it kept it very simple, but very real.
Yeah. Well, was there a song from this season that you found a little more difficult to secure, or you weren't necessarily sure if it was going to work for whatever reason, that just gave you a little more anxiety?
Ooh, listen, we have a lot of nail biting moments. You never know when you're going after really, really big songs. I mean, listen, we have a Beatles song in the finale. Those are big shoes to put on, and you hope you're going to land on that, and that absolutely came through. Hello Dolly again was a little complicated, but believe it or not, the In Excess, Need You Tonight, that's a little tricky, just because it's the best way to put it. They don't like covers very often, respectfully so. So the fact that we were able to do that was actually kind of a great big accomplishment, and that was a nail biter. Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of them. Another one I think is wonderful and surprising is Starships. When you watch Starships with you've got Zoey, Danny Michael Davis, and Aiden doing Starships. And I will admit, when I first heard Austin say, "What about Starships?" I was like, wait, explain this to me one more time. What are we doing? And it landed. It was perfect. And again,
Yeah.
a lot of that is that's the storytelling, and a lot of that is Harvey Mason makes some magic for us. I mean, you can also look at Danny Michael Davis doing Pure Imagination, right? And then it goes into a remix and the beat drops. And it's, again, when you look at these things on paper, you're going, okay, like that's, yeah, let's do it. Let's swing. Let's see if we can knock it out of the park. And then it actually goes out of the park. And you're like, wow, that happened. So those are all the moments that it just makes this all the better to be a part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's also the music score. I don't know how involved you are with the composers and everything, but we hear it quite a bit throughout each episode, I think, like that faster kind of drum beat cue, which is pretty unique to the show. What's that
100%.
process as far as collaborating with the composers?
It's so we all spot together each episode, and I will really say it's something that Austin worked very closely with the composers in season 1. You definitely hear a progression of it in season 2, but a lot of what is our rhythmic score came out of season 1, and it really came from Austin just working very closely with them and trying to find what was the thing that was going to offset us, because it's complicated, right? We live in a world of song. That's again what makes Zoey a amazing but different beast into itself, is the environment is loaded with music. So to find something else to play that emotional pacing and not have it be melodic per se, but be something that is still engaging and offset it was a process. And that really came from Austin working really, really, really closely with the composers, with both Bo and Cook. Yeah.
Well, we're hoping for a third season, but are there one or two songs you have in your back pocket that you're just still hoping to include in a future episode?
We don't have enough time. I think I've got about 4 pages and then a whole other book of songs. And hopefully we get there. Hopefully we get the season 3, and hopefully we get to keep on doing it. There's so many things. It's just amazing to watch what we've done in 2 seasons. And I'm just excited at thought that we could possibly keep growing and going in different directions and try new things.
Well, in the last few minutes here, this TV season, you were also a music supervisor on Genius Aretha, which is focused on Aretha Franklin, obviously. I imagine that was a fun world to play in as well, with just assembling songs from that era. Can you just talk about that experience a little bit?
Definitely different than Zoe's. It is a challenge when you're dealing with somebody's legacy, right? And not just anyone's legacy. Like not for nothing. It's Aretha Franklin. It's a mighty big mountain to climb, and you want to make sure you climb it right. And again, we did it during COVID, so that was also complicated. We've got about almost halfway through, and then COVID hit and we had to shut down. So there was a moment that we didn't quite know what was going to happen, if we were going to get to come back and finish it. So I'm so thankful that we got to do that. And it's, as a music supervisor, it's a dream come true to be able to take somebody whose career and their work and their art spans such a incredible amount of time, and to be able to play from the beginning, from when she was a child singing in church, all the way to the very end of her final Grammy performance, right? Singing for Pavarotti. Like it was an incredible arc. It was a lot of research. It was a lot of time, but we were very, very fortunate. It was a great team, and we just so happened to have been able to pull this off in times that were a little tough. And I'm just so glad that it was able to get out there and everybody got to see it, because there was a moment that we thought, oh, I don't know if we get to finish it. And that would have been heartbreaking, because we came so close, but we got it done. And it's, I hope that she is somewhere watching and approved of what we did.
Yeah. Well, 2 very different projects, but great work all around. For those of you watching, subscribe for more interviews and head to goldderby.com to make your Emmy predictions. Jen, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Bye.